that's what we're going to do. We're just going to get into this time. I'm going to ask some questions, and I'm just going to release him. I feel like I'm just the point guard giving some alley-oops. I'm just going to alley-oop him, and he's going to
bam.
He's going to dunk it. I'm going to throw something in this direction, and I'm just going to have fun with it. And again, I believe this is going to be something that many, many other leaders and people will enjoy to hear. Some of this content, some of this insights that we're sharing. I was going to take time to ask you to kind of form some questions. We didn't have time to do that. Hopefully, I'm able to capture some things, and I believe, regardless, we're going to get some good things out of this time. And so, especially because we are so interested in building a structure and a culture at a church that is healthy. And we're always evolving, we're always growing in the generations and the time. Just like he talked about last night, such a progression in things that if we end up feeling like we've arrived, what we'll do is we'll bring structures around tradition, and we'll protect tradition instead of establish progression. And next thing you know, we need an upgrade, or we find ourselves just kind of depleting or falling behind in the times, because I think everything that God does, and if he has a now word, and after that word there's something else that will move us forward into the next thing. And it's from glory to glory. It's just not that glory, it's another glory that he wants to set us up for. And so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to ask, and I'm going to turn him loose, and we're just going to enjoy this time. So we were talking a little bit about this, Bishop, about managers versus leaders. There's people that will just manage something, and there's people that you've identified as leaders. And so some of those differences are some of the things we talked about. I want you to speak into that. You've actually even thought of them in terms of A-teams. Like, this is my A-team. And so they're not just managers.
Right.
In other words, they're just not just sitting there and letting something just happen and always have to come to you for answers. When you see that, you're like, that's not an A-team mindset. That's not a leadership mindset. That's a manager. So speak into just what you think of that.
If I do it in biblical terms, and then I'll kind of take it away from there, because sometimes if we just talk outside of the Bible, people don't hear it or see it the same way. Sometimes in church world, the term faithfulness is defined by doing something that doesn't work for a long time. Mm-hmm. And so someone has like a prayer group, and they've got 10 people in it, and they say, Brother so-and-so is so faithful, he's prayed with those same 10 guys for 10 years. Well, the Bible doesn't call that faithfulness, because the Bible calls that unfaithfulness and wickedness. If you read the parable of the talents, if you return something to God in the same measure he gave it to you in, then you are a wicked servant. Mm-hmm. So faithfulness is not doing something that doesn't work for a long time. That's managing or maintaining. So in the parable of the talents, he said, well, you're an austere man, and so I gave back to you exactly what you gave to me. Right. And he said, you wicked servant, did you not know that I expected you to take what I gave you and make it fruitful? Yeah. So a manager, someone who's managing something is maintaining it. Moses has a ministry of maintenance. Right. The Moses mentality is, I'm going to keep you alive, keep you in shoes, keep you in clothes, and every day I got to keep providing manna. Every day we're going to do the same thing. Every day it's water from a rock. Every day it's this. Every day it's that. So it's a maintenance ministry. Yeah. So to me, an A-team or a leader is someone who is self-motivated. Yeah. I don't have to stand over you. If you're only doing right while I'm looking at you, I don't need you. Right. So you have to have someone who is self-motivated, someone who can take something and do it better than what I could do it. Right. In our church structure, because I can be an ideas guy or come up with a plan, but if I can do it better than you can, then you're obsolete. Right. I need you to take it and then do it better. Right. And then you move from gifting to capacity. Because this is a shift, I think, that's maybe important for this set of leaders right here. Because from inception to where you guys are at, one of the things that the senior leaders do is you have to pull people that have giftings. Because we need gifted people to do art, to do lights, to do sound, to do music, to help with children, and people have gifts. Then at a certain level, I need people around me that have capacity. Right. Because it's one thing to be able to sing. Mm-hmm. It's another thing to be able to build a music department.
That's good. Yeah.
And I know some people can sing that paint off the wall, but they can't build a department because they don't have people skills, they don't have organizational skills, they don't know how to include other people. They had to be the big star. They come late for rehearsal, and when we put them up, they can sing, but they can't build a department. I know people that love kids. They could have wrote the stuff for Sesame Street, and they could have played Big Bird and all that. You put them in a cardboard box in a room with a bunch of kids, and they can entertain kids, but they can't build a children's department.
That's good. Yeah.
So they have a gift, but they don't have capacity. And so it's not always their fault or whatever, but the point is, I need people with capacity that are around me to help me build, not just to do.
Right. The story that you shared at one of your preachings was that your spiritual father, late spiritual father, Lester Summerall, when you were about to move into your current Cornerstone building, he looked around and he said, "See me tonight."
Yeah.
And so you went over there that night to his hotel room.
Yep.
And the words he spoke to you, if I'm quoting this right, is, "Amateur hour is over."
Yes.
What did he mean by that?
Well, I thought we were awesome. And at whatever level that you're at, you think you're awesome until you get to the next level. It's kind of like looking at like your style. Like you look at pictures and you think at the moment
nice hairdo.
You think like that's great. And then 5 years from then, 10 years, and then you look back at that picture and you go like, what was I thinking about? But when it was happening, you were awesome. Do
you think I'm gonna feel that way about this this shirt right here? You said it looked like a straight jacket.
Well, I told him, I said, it looks like they modified straight jacket there when they let you out. But it's cool.
I'll be like, what was I thinking?
I'm happy with it. Do your thing, brother. Do your thing. But you will look back at that next week and go like, what was I thinking about?
Dang, just next week, not even a year from now.
No, it's all good. But, so at that season, we thought we were awesome because, Kathy and I both grew up in small classical Pentecostal churches. And the church I grew up in had roughly like 100, 120, they might hit 150 on a big thing. And so by the time we were 23 years old, we were pastoring the largest church we'd ever been a part of. And so we were just kind of finding our way. So in the group that we grew up in, one of the largest churches in the entire state, I think, had 300 people or 400 people, something like that.
Wow.
And so comparatively speaking, we were awesome. And so we thought we were doing good and we were making some progress. And so Dr. Summerall had come and he was walking through there and he says, when you get done with your new building, amateur hour is over. And I was just like, so I just wrote it down. It was like ouch. But I'm just writing, amateur hour is over. So I went back and I told our team, amateur hour is over. So Dr. Summerall started saying, if it's not excellent, and excellence is not just a performance. Excellence is a spirit.
That's good.
Daniel had an excellent spirit. You can't, because some people try to buy their way into excellence. So excellence is not always having the best stuff. It's doing the best you can with what you have at the time.
That's good.
And doing it with the right spirit. And if you do it with the right spirit and an excellent spirit, I would rather go to a church that may not have what a lot of people would say are excellent facilities, but they've done excellent with what God gave them, and the spirit is excellent.
Right.
As to be in something that's not done that way. So I'm not just talking about performance, but I'm talking about the spirit of everything. So that's what we did. We started realizing, he was like, if it's not proper. If a person can't do it, it's time to get the amateurs out of the way. And what that became to us is removing people or encouraging them to grow, those that considered what we were doing a hobby. And so, serving God and working in the church ministry was to some people a hobby. And I got football season, I got baseball season, I go to the gym, and I volunteer in the children's ministry. Well, to us, this is not a hobby. We had to start getting people around us that felt called to do this. This because your blessing is in your place. And so if your place is driving a church bus, your blessing is waiting for you on that church bus.
That's good.
And as long as you're trying to get behind the pulpit, you're going to miss your blessing because God put your blessing where he called you.
Yeah.
And you'll be more blessed driving the church bus than you would be up behind the pulpit. Your wife is waiting for you somewhere connected to that bus. I don't know where she's getting on that bus, whether you're going to pick her up or you're going to hit her car with that bus and meet her at an accident. I don't know how. But the wife, the spouse that God has for you is somehow connected to you being in that bus.
That's good. That's good. Amateur hour is over.
Amateur hour is over. And a lot of times it's just raising our game.
Yeah.
It's just saying, how can we do what we do at the next level?
Did people take that and did some run with it and some maybe got kind of weeded out and others were like, no,
that's with everything. That's with everything. No matter what level you're at or what you're teaching, the house of God, Bethel, with a ladder, there's always angels ascending and descending.
Yeah.
At any given time in our ministry, some people are going up and some people are going down. Some people are going up, some people are going down. Different seasons, different times. There was a guy that I knew and he had a church and they decided they were going to redo everything. And they wanted to make it actually a bit more like this, and they painted all of their walls black so they could get more control over the lighting and things and decorate it. Anyway, whatever it was, they just decided to paint it black. And so he had one of his members come to him and says, I've never been to a church with black walls, and if we don't do something about these walls, I'm leaving. So which is kind of an odd thing, but that's how people are. It's like, you painted the walls. So the pastor said, I'm going to pray with you because I think that you should go. Because I mean, if you're going to leave over what color we painted the walls, there's, that's your commitment is so deep. But so he says, but what I want to do is pray with you that God will send you to a church that never changes the colors of their walls. Mm-hmm. So no matter what you do, if change and progression is not a part of the fabric of who you are, somewhere along the line, people will stop walking with you.
Yeah.
That's what I mean when I talk about capacity.
Yeah.
Do you have the capacity to grow? Do you have the capacity to grow with me, to change with me, to walk into new truth with me, to experiment with me, to let me try something new, to let us hear a fresh word, and then try to figure out how do we then flesh out and articulate and demonstrate what God is saying to us. And we don't always get it right the first time.
Right.
The oxen sometimes stumbles.
Yeah.
And the ark moves. But I don't need you putting your hand on it, because sometimes we look unstable when we're in transition as if we don't know what we're doing. And the reason for that is because we don't know what we're doing. We've never been that way before.
Yeah.
We're walking it out with you, and God says, well, do this, and you hear a word.
Yeah, so not only do you guys have a spirit of excellence, when me and my wife were there, it was obvious there's a spirit of excellence, but you also have a great culture of honor. And I can't help but think it's because people have owned why we do it. They understand this is why we do it, so they're excellent on how we do it. When you know the why, it's easier to go about the how.
Yes.
So what are the mindset shapers that you've developed that have been instilled in the culture of Cornerstone that bring such a wonderful experience of excellence and of honor?
Well, because it can't be something you do, it has to be something you are. Either you are a person of honor or you're not. Period. If you have to make yourself honor somebody, you're not honorable. You're not a person of honor. So the why is based on God. You do what you do as unto the Lord. So people are the beneficiary of your service, but God is the object of your service. And so you are watching children and working in the children's ministry as unto the Lord.
Yeah.
Because Jesus comes to us as the sick and the broken, the prisoner, the fatherless, the widows. He said, when you do that to them, you do that to me.
Yeah.
Okay, so you got to pretend Jesus is in that room because he is.
Yeah.
And that you're stewarding the children. The most valuable thing that Kathy and I ever possess in this world is our children. When they were coming up, they're still valuable to us, but they're both married now and building their own lives as well. But I'm saying that's our most valuable commodity. Mm-hmm. And for me to come to church and to put my children in your care, so imagine how God feels about that.
Yeah.
So when you do that, you realize that people have entrusted you with something. You've been given a sacred trust. For every Sunday, I'm just telling you the things that I would tell some of our team over the years. Every Sunday, people come to my church that I have to be aware that every time I get up to preach, it's somebody's first time to ever hear anybody preach. It's somebody's first time for a long time to ever hear somebody preach. It's somebody else's first time to ever hear me preach. Somebody else came that morning saying, God, if you don't say something to me today, I don't know what I'm going to do. Somebody the night before was going to take their own life and said, I'm going to give it one more go.
Yeah.
Somebody is hanging on by a thread.
Yeah.
Every week. You don't have the luxury of coming up in here as a leader and having a bad attitude day. You can do that on Monday. You don't have that, you don't have that luxury of walking past some mother who got a bad report from her 7-year-old teacher, and then the child psychologist thinks that you want to put them on every kind of medication known to man, and then they're failing in school, and the stepdad or the baby's daddy is causing problems, and they got to go to court, and she got told off by her supervisor, and she's she's just hanging on by a thread, and she's walking that child into your classroom, and you got an attitude problem. Well, we can't do that. You have to be a person of honor. And you have to realize honor will bring out of that child something that the child psychologist can't bring out of it. Right. Honoring that mother, sometimes the church is the only place that woman has of honor. She has been told off on her job. The teachers think she's a poor mother. Her baby's daddy thinks she's, whatever. Yeah. Everybody. But when she walks into that place of honor,
yeah.
And because she didn't have to have a title to be honored. She only has to breathe to be honored. And so when you surround people with honor, something stands up on the inside of them.
Yeah, and it sounds like you help them form a story. Like every face is a story.
Absolutely.
And if you treat them like a human being, you treat them with that they have a story, then that's really going to inform how you kind of go about and serve and
the kingdom is a culture of life. Most evangelical Christians would agree that we are pro-life. We are pro-life, and we resist the concept of abortion because we believe that all life has value. Mm-hmm. So if all life has value, that works outside of the womb as well. Yeah. So that means that you have value because you are God's. Yeah. Because you are breathing God's air. Because you're created in the image of God. Mm-hmm. Therefore, I choose to try to find the image of God in every person that He has created. And then if you nurture that and try to honor that, it will grow. Yeah. And you have to believe that. You have to believe that because people, especially when you're leadership and you deal with people can push every button you have. And you could think to yourself, you are not even anywhere close to being saved. Right? Because church people can act funny. And they can try you and they can test you. That's why you have to have it down in you. That this is not a hobby. This is not something I'm doing out of obligation. Yeah. This is something I'm doing because I believe that there is something in me that will get the best up out of you. Yeah. And the trajectory of your family will change because I said yes to what God gave me to do.
That's so good. We were talking a little bit about just cultural stuff and how we shape the cultures of our church. And you made a distinction between culture and structures. That there are structural things that are important. And from that structure, you fill it in with a culture. So what are some of the major teachings and concepts that are structure related that you find yourself being redundant in for the purpose of people really having it in them and sticking out, especially if you want to create a vibrant, spirit-filled kingdom culture in your churches? What are some of those major pillars
Yep.
or structures that you're saying, so honor is one, and what are some of the other ones that are in place that?
Yeah, when I would talk about structure and culture, it would mean to me that the structure is like the framework of a house or an empty house. It is the structure, and then the culture is how you decorate it. It's what's on the inside of that structure. So structure to me is the concept of order. It is, first of all, the belief that God moves through structure. Because to a lot of spirit-filled people, that's a leap.
Right.
You know, they believe that the more the Spirit moves, the more unstructured it has to be. But that's not what the Bible teaches. The Bible teaches spirit and structure. So you have historically churches that had great structure, but no spirit. Then you had spiritual churches that had no structure. But the unbeatable combination is spirit and structure. It's water that flows from a rock. It's a rock with a flow.
Yeah. That's good.
And so it is, you have to believe that God flows through structure, and that structure does not inhibit the flow. If you're going to have a river, it has banks. And the banks are the structure that cause the river to have a current. Otherwise, it's a pond or it's a lake. It doesn't have any flow because it doesn't have any structure pushing it in a direction. So that to me is structure. Structure is the understanding of headship. Structure is the understanding of measures, mantles. It is assignment. It is degrees. It is greater and lesser. It is where things are placed. It is how they function. It is, all of those things are structure. So, and then the culture then becomes the things that you fill it with. You fill it with a culture of honor, a culture of faith, a culture of gratitude, a culture of generosity, a culture of acceptance, a culture, whatever. You have great culture points here. And it's not just something you come up with. This is what we ascribe to, and this is what we believe in. So we have a hard time sometimes in the church understanding measures, and that a kingdom is not a democracy, and that a kingdom functions on assignment, measures, and we have this problem in democratic societies with greater and lesser, because we're really big into equality. And I get it, please, as it relates to earthly governments. All men are created equal by God. I get all that. As it relates to assignments, they are not equal. Equality is Luciferian in its nature. I will be equal with God.
Wow.
Okay? So the concept of worship is I must understand something is higher than me. Otherwise, I become my own God. When I become my own God, I determine my own good and evil. And having become my own God, I replace God. So the Bible is filled with this. Just track this for a minute. God, greater and lesser. God creates a greater light to rule the day, a lesser light to rule the evening. Okay? Of those born of women, there is none greater than John. So somebody's keeping track. But the least in the kingdom is greater than John.
That's good.
Okay? Faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love. All of these gifts. But behold, I show you a more excellent way. So we have a hard time in the church. Let every soul be subject to the higher power. Well, when you think you're on the same level as every power, then how can you be subject to anybody? So we are positionally equal, but functionally different. I still believe that the husband is the head of his house.
Yes.
Come on, Oprah. Throw an amen out here someplace. I felt that Oprah spirit just come at me. So the husband is the head of his house. The husband is not smarter than his wife. That's not what the Bible says. The Bible said the husband is the head. So that means my wife and I are positionally equal with God. Positionally equal, but functionally different.
That's good.
We have different functions. And my children, when we're in my house, they are positionally equal with God. They can pray the same prayer. God will hear their prayer and answer their prayer just like he would mine. But our function in our house is different.
Right.
So y'all are still working on that, I can see. But anyhow, that's the way it works in the church too. Let every soul be subject to the higher power.
Yeah.
So here we go. The recognition and the ability to respond to authority is the sign that the kingdom is present. The man that Jesus said had the most faith was a man that understood authority. Watch how he says. He says, I am a man of authority because I am under authority. Here's how authority functions. I say to one, go, and he goes.
Yeah.
I say to another, come, and he comes. Jesus said, you understand this better than all these people that have been walking with me.
Yeah.
Okay, speak the word only. So if we believe the kingdom is present, here's what happens. If there is no demonstration of the kingdom, then the enemy doesn't have to listen. So if I say to an usher, come, and he doesn't come, and I say to an usher, go, and he doesn't go, the devil is sitting there going, you ain't casting me out. You don't even have authority over an usher. And now you're going to have the nerve to call somebody up with a demon and say, demon, go. The devil, if your ushers don't have to obey you, why do I have to obey you? So the usher or anybody, I'm just giving examples of usher. So us submitting to the higher power is because of it's still because of God. Because we want to physically demonstrate to principalities and powers that this is a kingdom over here.
Yeah.
And when those of higher authority speak, things have to move.
Yeah.
And so if our leaders speak something, then things move because we want the devil to know the same guy that says, usher, go here, sing this song, don't do that, shut that down, that things move when words come out of his mouth. We want the devil to know that's the same way we approach it when he says sickness go, when he says heavens open, when he says powers be broken. We want you to know you do have to obey.
I want to ask 1,001 more questions. But here's one.
Well, that's because I can't answer them shortly. I got a thing on me going.
You really teased with that and the measures and the order and all that stuff. But here's what I'll ask you, totally off script, is what would it look like then, and I guess you gave it, Caesar, of a church that has not functioning in that understanding or authority?
It's chaos.
That you could look at it and you could walk in as like they don't understand.
It's chaos.
Kingdom.
It's chaos. Every man does what's right in his own eyes. Every person is self-governed and self-willed. Everyone has their own agenda. Everyone has their own word. Everyone is going their own direction. It's spasmodic. It's a body that can't get in line with the head. It's paralyzed. Mm-hmm. You know, it's the paralyzed servant. The head is working, but the body will not cooperate with the head. And it is just chaos.
Give me some examples of like when you walk in. Have you walked into some of those churches?
Oh yes.
And you're like, oh, this is they don't understand authority.
It's filled with attitude of this fierce independence, and nobody's going to tell me what to do. And I'm not talking about being commanding and dictatorial with people, because I ask people, and I've talked, even my children, my family, I don't say to them, go tell an usher to do. I say, would you please go ask brother so-and-so to do this? But they know that, you know, it's a for real ask. Mm-hmm. But I mean, you still are polite about it and kind. It's not like telling people what to do.
Right.
But people who are disempowered don't like having authority over them because they think that somehow it reduces them to be answerable to another person. Mm-hmm. When people have no authority, they don't know how to respond to authority. Right. So the centurion was able to recognize authority in Jesus because he was a man of authority himself. The hardest people to pastor are broke down, beat up people who have never been in charge of anything, because since they don't have any authority, it's hard for them to recognize my authority. Right. Because if you'd ever had authority, you would understand that being in authority is a great responsibility. And how would you ever run something had somebody put you up here?
Yeah.
But when you ain't never done nothing but sit around and complain about everybody else in authority, and you don't ever see yourself as moving towards authority, it's hard for you to recognize somebody else's authority.
Yeah.
So it becomes difficult for them to move into leadership Here's a natural example, and I'll give you a biblical example. Natural example was when our daughter, Meredith, who's 27 now, but when she was I think it was like 4 or 5 years old, we had a little dog. It was the only thing on the planet she was in charge of. Mm-hmm. And I remember walking in there one day, and she had that dog, and she was looking at that dog. You will sit down. Sit when I tell you. She was just like 4 or 5 years old. She was like commanding this dog. And I thought, like, who is this child? Because Meredith is a sweet child. She was just going. And then I realized it's the only thing on the planet she has authority over. Are you working that in your brain? Yeah. Have you seen that person? They've never had authority over anything, and you give them one little thing, and they turn into a
monster. Yeah.
Because it's the only thing they have authority over on the planet. So the children of Israel come out of Egypt, and Moses is called to be their deliverer. He's their pastor. And they say to him, "Oh, who made you a ruler over us?" Well, I don't know, God. 10 plagues, miracles.
Remember the sea?
But they're still mad. Because they had been abused by previous authority, they resisted godly authority.
That's good.
Because their idea of authority was formulated by Pharaoh. And so many of us have poor relationships or context or reference points with authority, and therefore we don't understand that authority is not there to constrict you, it is there to release you.
Yeah.
So that what you do is legitimate. I'm just kind of segueing here.
Okay.
Because one of the problems we have in the culture today is a lack of legitimacy. People don't know what is legitimate. So we just have people that up and make themselves something. Mm-hmm. They just stick it on their Facebook page. I'm prophet so-and-so. Mm-hmm. Well, who made you a prophet?
Right.
Who said you was a prophet? What makes you legitimate? So when there's the loss of legitimacy in a culture, and it goes all the way through culture, so we have illegitimate churches. We have people that just want to live together and never get married.
Right.
And say, oh, well, it's just a piece of paper. Well, yeah, so's your driver's license. I don't even know what that argument means. It's just a piece of paper. So's a $100 bill. It's the concept of legitimacy. And then people don't know what's legitimate. And so then we celebrate illegitimacy. And so and our members are, and when you have a culture of illegitimacy, you are at such risk to be scammed.
Right.
And to be taken advantage of. Because we have, what our members don't know is that there are people in doctoral programs who are atheists, whose doctoral studies are on how stupid and gullible people who believe in God are. And part of the way they're proving it is they go create a fake Facebook profile, call themselves a prophet, start throwing out their little fortune cookie. They just open fortune cookies and great things are coming your way today. Hallelujah. And then they get a few thousand followers on Facebook. Preach prophet. That's my word, prophet. And they're doing a doctoral study, and you are proving their point because you don't know those people. They're not even saved.
No.
And so we've lost our concept. I know I'm going to upset somebody, but I'm getting on an airplane. Somebody go start the car. Where's the security ministry in this church?
We're going right through the back.
Watch out for me, brother, okay? So here's the point, and you got to hear my heart on this because I don't have rocks to throw at people. I'm just trying to get a framework here.
Yeah.
I think there's something wrong when we have people that don't know how to be silent, and being a Christian is not me agreeing with you on everything. So here's what happens. We have 14, 15-year-old girls in our churches getting pregnant. Okay? Happens sometimes. I'm not about shaming people. But they will go home and pull their shirt up and put a picture of your 15-year-old pregnant belly on Facebook. And the people in the church will go, congratulations. For what? I feel you. You don't even have to clap. For what? You're not returning home you have done nothing of merit. Okay, so there should be a place between shame and celebration. That place is called discretion. You should be discreet about it. We're not trying to shame you. We're not trying to shame your family. When the baby shows up, I will be the first to throw it a shower, and I ain't throwing you no shower. That's why the other girls want to get pregnant. How come we can't throw a shower for the ones that are doing it properly? Because we have lost the concept of what is legitimate.
Yeah.
And you want us to throw you a party. I will throw the baby I ain't throwing you no party. For what?
That's good.
I'm just saying. This is what happens when we lose the concept of legitimacy.
Yeah.
And again, it happens in our church like it does everybody else's. And I'm not about shaming people. I want them to be loved and embraced. I want them to understand people make mistakes and all those kind of things. But you should not reward illegitimacy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's not, the child is not illegitimate, the parents are.
Yeah.
There's an illegitimate father running around out there, and a mother got, whatever brought the situation on. My point is that when we celebrate illegitimacy, and I don't know why that is with church people that will see that and go like, congratulations, oh, awesome, praise the Lord. And you throw your little prophecy on there. Just, we act like we don't have any sense. So when you lose legitimacy, it happens the same. We have people that split other people's churches, run down the road and paint on the apostle so-and-so. And we got people, just praise the Lord, brother. Whatever. We have no concept of what is legitimate.
Think about people like Walt Disney and Steve Jobs. People who have done amazing things, but a lot of us kind of celebrate them and what they've achieved, but don't realize that some of them had some blemishes in their leadership style and the way they came across.
Sure.
Yet they were legitimate leaders that created innovative products and ideas that just kind of changed our world. I say that because have we become a culture or people that are hypersensitive in terms of when leaders do something that they might not agree with or have done it like, are we a real hypersensitive that I'm not going to follow that? Or are we too tolerant that we're willing to allow anything to happen and just keep going with it?
Awesome. Great question, because I think those are the tensions. I think most things exist in a tension. Most things are not either or. Most things are both and. Most things are somewhere an amalgamation of two opposing viewpoints. So just to explore those two viewpoints, we become hypersensitive because we like to use the fact that we are filled with the Spirit to baptize our self-will and independence and rebellion. And so whenever we don't want to do something, we say, I got a check in my spirit. I don't feel good about it. What is that supposed? Because that's a subjective thing that nobody, when we talk about you got a check in your spirit, only check I want to see is the one in the offering plate. Thank you. That's the problem. Your checks are always in your spirit.
Your spirit, yeah.
We need to get them checks to manifest. And I don't feel good on it. I don't have a peace about it. I don't have a witness on that. We use all that nomenclature, and which really diminishes the true fact of discernment. When you just throw it out there all the time, everything is I don't feel good. I don't have peace about it. I got to check in my spirit. I don't know. God ain't said that to me. That ain't my gift. That ain't my season. That ain't what God called me to do. You start throwing all that stuff out there. Then when you say it, you desensitize yourself to the truth of it.
Yeah.
So that's how we become hypersensitive. Anything that we don't get right away, somehow we put God's name on. Rather than saying to myself, this is going to be a learning curve.
Right.
This is not a test of him being a father. This is a test of whether or not I'm a son. The test is on me to see if I can walk around the city and not know why. This is a test of God didn't say it to me, but he said it to leadership. The Apostle Paul said, and the Lord said to me, do this, and so we went.
Yeah.
God didn't say it to them. So that's how we become hypersensitive. On the other hand, getting back to the illegitimacy, is the fact that Some people will follow anything. And I believe that it's important for us all to understand that leaders are human beings as well. And human beings and leaders have flaws and are works in progress. And that we should not put upon leaders standards that we don't even have for ourselves. And because you're a human being, I'm a human being. I'm anointed to preach it. I'm not anointed to live it. I have to live it out like everybody else does, step by step, fleshing it out, pushing, crucifying the flesh, casting down imaginations, pushing, just like everybody else does. But on the other hand, we have people that are just flat out in the ozone and have lost their mind and are publicly living in sin and just have cast away all restraint. And people are just like, they just come up with a whole nother set of values to justify it. So I think somewhere in the middle, we have to say, the Apostle Paul said it the best way, follow me as I follow Christ. So you're following Christ, your heart is right, you're pursuing God, you're doing that. Doesn't mean that every decision that you make has to be perfect the first time, but you should be able to expect your leaders to follow you because they know your heart is to pursue Christ. Right. If your heart becomes or was to pursue money or to pursue women or to pursue some ungodly something, I don't have to follow you.
Right.
Because that becomes a blind leader of the blind, and the destination is always the ditch.
Now, there's a word that I'm going to be getting from your church that I really want to give to the leaders. And it had to do with your conference when you talked about quantum wealth. And it was just dynamic, and it was much more than just the idea of wealth. It was bigger than that. It was the idea of poverty versus materialism versus kingdom and all these other factors involved. It was dynamic, and I think it's even a now word for our church. In there, you say that the warfare that or opposition that surrounds certain things. I believe it was a deliverer, inheritance and property, and land. And acquiring territory is one of those things, that opposition. So, yeah, share a little bit about that.
There's always warfare around certain things. Whenever there's warfare around something, it's important. Anything of value has to be protected. So if you start walking towards certain buildings and they got a bunch of security guards around, a bunch of security, it's something valuable in there.
Right.
So anytime the enemy puts warfare around something, that means the closer you get to it and the more intense the warfare becomes, the more valuable it is and the more destructive it is to his kingdom if you get a hold of it. So there's always been warfare around property, who possesses the land, because that's always been the promise of God. You read through the Old Testament, there's never a promise of going to heaven for serving God. You do go to heaven. Lord have mercy.
Okay, come on.
You do go to heaven if you serve God, but they didn't serve God to go to heaven. That's what somebody taught you to do when you were a kid or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
But the promise of serving God was that you inherited the land. So your seed shall possess the land. That's the promise.
Yeah, yeah.
The meek do inherit the earth.
Why is it so important that we get territory or land?
I can see what?
Why is it so important that we get territory and land? Because there's some people.
Because it's the Lord's.
Right.
And the devil is illegally occupying it.
And then when you have that territory,
then you have authority over it.
Yeah.
And you can develop culture.
Yeah.
The kingdom starts in a garden and ends in a city. God is the author of culture. So our problem is we think that culture belongs to the devil. There are people that believe that if man had never sinned, we'd still be in a garden naked. Like God would not have a new idea. Like we would never have developed electricity. Thank God the devil got involved, because now we got electricity. If it had been left up to God, we'd still be eating coconuts naked in a garden. Are you kidding me? God is the originator of culture. God is the originator of art. God is the originator of inventions and creativity. I don't know why we gave all this credit to the devil. So that's what they believe.
Right.
So because of this crazy, we're out of here clicking our heels together over the rainbow, whatever thing that people came up with, we have been willing to abdicate the earth over to the devil, and then we complain the whole time that the devil is running around on the earth. That's because you don't want it. You don't have the legitimate right to have authority over a community unless you're willing to marry the land. So this is what the Bible says. The Bible says, as a young man marrieth a virgin, so shall thy sons be married unto thee. Thy name shall be called Beulah and Hezbollah, which means beautiful and married. Okay, so but we have people, they're not willing to marry the land. If you're not willing to marry the land, you don't have the legitimate right to sow seed into it. So when you marry the land, that means I'm not dating the land and then plan on getting up out of here. This thing is till death do us part, till Jesus comes back. So you marry the land.
Right.
Therefore, I can legitimately sow seed into it and reproduce children of the kingdom because I'm married to it. So I can get
the enemy opposes that.
The enemy opposes that. That's why the enemy comes up with these ideas like he did with Eve. God ain't said that. What God said is, I got you a mansion somewhere, someplace. Go over there and look. So you don't marry this right here. The proof of your citizenship in the kingdom is not your ability to go find something. It's your ability to summon something and say, that kingdom, come right here. Not my ability to get up and go find it someplace else. So if I get started on that, you're going to get some more emails. because I get tired of this someday later, let's get up out of here, let's turn it over to the devil, and then we wonder why the enemy will occupy every space that the church abdicates. And when you think you're leaving tomorrow, then that's why the enemy has the school districts and the politicians and the entertainment, because you refuse to put your feet down and say, the earth is the Lord's. I used to hear people say that Adam gave the earth over to the devil. You can't give what's not yours. The only thing Adam lost was authority and dominion.
Yeah.
He did not lose the planet.
Yeah.
And when Jesus came, he came to restore the dominion and the authority, but the earth was always the Lord's, and the fullness thereof, and they that dwell therein. So if the meek are going to inherit the earth, that means it has to be here. You need to come out of this apocalyptic, end time, broke down. Half this, people say, you see all this stuff on the news, it must be the end times. We just have better news now. You just are more aware of it. There's always been earthquakes. There's always been wars. You just didn't know about it because we only had the 24-hour news cycle since Ted Turner invented CNN. And I said, well, they're cutting people's heads off. What? Have you read the Old Testament? They've been cutting people's heads off for a long time. And they've been doing it all over the Middle East for a long time. We just didn't have cameras there.
Yeah. I want you to talk about this because even in the part about the land, you talked about how they're zoning things in and they're zoning things out.
This is how it manifests.
Yeah.
In America, our demons have been to school. And so our demons, like if you go to some countries, you can spot demons because they're witch doctors and voodoo people and all that. In America, our doctors wear suits and ties, have corner offices, and they've been to college. And so our demons function in line with the system. So the warfare is around zoning laws. It's around regulations. So if you put the land and the media together, there's always warfare around media.
Yeah.
Because it controls culture.
Yeah.
So it is a modern day manifestation of the spirit of Jezebel. Jezebel got stirred up because she wanted Naboth's vineyard property. And her point was trying to silence the prophetic voice. And so those two things combined now manifest themselves in zoning laws, where they will tell a church, you can't be zoned here. We want Naboth's vineyard. You have to go way out there, someplace else. So if it's something that they want, whether it's a stadium or an X-rated movie theater or whatever it is, they find a way to zone it in.
Yeah.
But when a church wants to build, then all of a sudden it's like, well, you know, and in California and in certain states, it has crept up on people so quickly. Where I know people that were building churches and the city council tell them, we don't need a church that big in this county. And just tell them, we're not going to give you that property because we don't want a church that big. And it turns into traffic, you know, it's too much traffic on this road. When we were getting the church building that we were in, we had to do traffic studies for the city. Because they were like, we had a baseball stadium. What was it, Kathy? A mile from the church? 2 miles? A mile from our church. There was a baseball stadium. But they're concerned about the traffic of my church. So I had to do traffic studies. So finally I said to them, everybody in my church lives in this town, which means they pay taxes. So we can drive on any road that we want to whenever we get ready to. Why do they have to have a special permit or dispensation from you to drive on the streets that they paid for? So it becomes zoning, it becomes media. Churches are the only people that produce programs and then pay themselves to be on. Why do we got to pay to be on? Everybody else is getting paid to be on.
Right.
We have to buy. That's why we got things like our own internet channels and stuff.
Yeah.
A little plug for CornerstoneGlobal.tv.
Yeah.
And we have our own internet channels and things like that are going on because there's warfare around it.
That's right.
There's always been an uneasy relationship between the media and the church.
Yeah.
And
The airwaves.
the airwaves. Who controls the principality and power of the air? Who controls the airwaves?
Somebody had recently shared with us that their tithe, they wanted to give their tithe to a place that was in need, and so it was legitimate. It was a place in need, and understood their tithe as being something that they can give wherever they would like to give, instead of bringing their tithe into the storehouse, bringing the tithe in the house.
That's called
you ever
being
heard that?
Yes, I've heard of it. It's called I don't want to be accountable. It's called I can't check up on that. It's called it's called I want to eat at this restaurant and pay a bill over here. It's just I don't even know where to start with those kind of people, because I don't even take them seriously. It's like these people that want to tell me tithing is in the Old Testament. My brain starts melting because it's so ignorant for you to say something like that. Like anything in the Old Testament we don't believe. Okay, well here's one that's in the Old Testament. In the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. That's in the Old Testament. Like that's their blanket ridiculous statement that just makes your head hurt. And I've come to the conclusion that there are people that are too dumb to be a part of my church. I'm sorry. You have to at least have a thumb, and be able to walk upright or something. Because, okay, so for example, we may edit so much of this. This is going to be like a 5-minute.
5 minutes.
Because like we have like the giving kiosk like you have.
Yeah.
And someone told one of our leaders, like, I'm not coming to the church anymore. They were like, why? Because they have, kiosks where people give. And so they said, well, you should go see, Bishop was standing around the front. And they told me, they said, I'm not coming because you have the kiosk. I said, you know what? You're not smart enough to be here. I'm not mad at you. You're just not smart enough to be here. If that really bothers you, because nobody's making you use it, you use it every place else you go. You don't realize that we're progressing, that we're not using the abacus anymore. So.
But where does that mindset come from? Even your tithe, that it wouldn't go somewhere else? Because I understand that that's an offering. You give
It's
an
an
offering
almsgiving.
where you want to give, but you give an offering to your church, but you tithe
No,
elsewhere?
it's the other way around. You
Right.
tithe to your church and you give offering to whoever you want to give it to.
Yeah.
Because part of the principle of the tithe is also accountability, which leads us right back to the same subjects we've been covering all day: self-willed, independent, self-governed. Because here was the initial way that the Bible said, if you remember, under the law, and I get the difference between law, everything in the Old Testament is not Old Covenant. Everything in the New Testament is not New Covenant. It just happens to be in different books. So So the principle of the tithe was, the Lord said, you shall come and you will stand before the priest and you will say to him out of your mouth, the Lord brought us out of the land of Egypt, and this assuredly is 1/10 of all the Lord has put into my possession. And you will put it in a basket and you will worship before the priest and the Lord there. That means that's accountability. That means we don't have the same process by which we do it. But when you put your tithe in there and you're bringing it to a local storehouse, then that means you're saying to the church family, to the man of God, this is 1/10 of what the Lord gave me. When you're sending it all over hither and yon, can't nobody check up on you. I've had people tell me, I would say, because they want to be involved in something, and somebody would say to them, well, we don't have any record of your giving. Well, I just put all mine in cash. Yeah, right. How then are we how are you accountable?
Yeah.
Well, I don't want my tax deduction. Then don't take it. We need to know your giving. If the church that you're going to is not worth being supported, then you should not be there.
Yeah. Last thing, this corporate Christ that you talked about last night, you referred to, was there anything that you left out that you would like to just, I love the idea, and God's been speaking to us and based on kind of unity, oneness, being able to do something together. And I love how you talked about all doors open.
Yep.
To even people that are just around the corporate Christ setting. So, yeah, what does that look like to you as you project in the future? Because we almost believe that the revival is going to be that corporate Christ type
Absolutely.
of movement.
Well, God deals with us based on the state that he finds us and who we're aligned with. So if we are in a state of corruption, his work is to save us. If we are saved, then he builds covenant with us. And if we are in covenant with him, then he wants us to become part of the body, the community. Sometimes I would just call it the community. Jesus came to build a new ethnos. It's where we get the word ethnic group from. You are a holy nation is the word ethnos. You are a holy nation. He has called us out of every tribe, kindred, and tongue. We're forever trying to pull God into our tribe, kindred, and tongue. God made us how he made us on purpose. Red, yellow, black, white, shades in between, all of the different things. God made you the way he made you on purpose. He made you that to help fulfill your destiny, for you to bring some special herbs and spices to the kingdom so that it's not all the same thing. So it is not the loss of identity, but it is not the exaltation of individuality. Where there is the exaltation of the individual, people become aggrandizing. Where there is aggrandizement and self-seeking, there's insult. And where there's insult, there's rudeness. And where there's rudeness, there's injury. Where there's injury, there's offense. Where there's offense, there's division. Where there can be no more us, because it is always about me. So at some point, Jesus says, I'm treating you, and there are some blessings that we have claimed individually that only belong to the corporate body. The transfer of wealth does not belong to you. It belongs to the body.
Yes, yes.
And there are things that he, when he talks to them about the tithe in Malachi, he said, you've robbed me, this whole nation. So he dealt with them as a nation. There had to be somebody paying their tithe, but he judged them based on who they were aligned with and dealt with them based on as a group.
Yeah.
So you have the story of Achan. Jericho is taken because it's the first city. God said the first is mine. And everybody did right but Achan and his family. And God said, y'all, Israel cannot win their battle because we can't get these people are destroying the corporate Christ. They are breaking rank and breaking unity. When everybody, God so values the unity, and it happens so few times in the Bible that he actually said, you know what, it's better, let's just get rid of these jokers. Ananias and Sapphira. Y'all ain't saying amen now, but anyhow, and these are not Sunday morning church growth messages, but the point is that there's a lot of questions that it may engender that could be answered, but the point is that unity is so, and oneness is so scarce throughout the scripture that anytime it shows up, something big happens.
Yeah.
That at some point God said, every so often we get this. And now I'm going to let Ananias and Sapphira mess it up? You know, we'll just sort that out later. You know, Achan and his family, we'll deal with that down the road. So Even when it's not people that are doing what God wants them to do. They're building the Tower of Babel, and God said the people are of one speech. Nothing is impossible to them. So the purpose of division is limitation.
Yeah.
God divided their languages to limit them. So the enemy knows that the purpose of division is limitation. Because when we become as one, we are not limited.
Oh.
So sometimes we have to lay down our agendas. We have to prefer our brothers. The weak have to bear the infirmities. The strong have to bear the infirmities of the weak. We have to pray for one another that we may be healed. That God turns our captivities when we pray for our friends. That God puts our answer in somebody else to keep us moving together. Yeah. So he gives to one this gift, to another this gift, to another this gift, and gives none of us all the gifts, so that it keeps us moving together and being interdependent rather than codependent, so that we realize I don't have it all together, but together we have it all.